Web Marketing That Works podcast, episode 99. Today's guest is Chris Adams.
Welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Come behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments and listen in as amazing guests confess the truth about what really works. Now, here are your hosts, Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins.
My name's Adam Franklin, and welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Can you believe it's been 99 episodes already? I remember when Tobes and I started in April last year, April 2014. We thought it's going to be so great to get the first 5 episodes out, and I looked at a few podcasts that had over 100 episodes, and I wasn't sure if it would make it this far, but I'm really pleased that we have, and it's been a tremendous opportunity to connect with a whole bunch of our guests and to do the solo shows as well. So thank you for your listenership. I really appreciate it. And today's guest is a gentleman called Chris Adams. Now, before I introduce you to him, I want to let you know that this is the podcast for people who love marketing on the web. You'll be taken behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments, and we'll show you the good, the bad, and the ugly. We confess what's failed and reveal the truth about what really works. The podcast is brought to you by our book, which is also called Web Marketing That Works. And the gift for you, our valued listener, is the 33 free marketing templates from our book. You can get your hands on those at bluewiremedia.com.au/book. Okay, so today's guest, Chris Adams, he has a very interesting story, and I'm going to let him tell it on the show because it's fascinating. It crosses from early days at Facebook, Hollywood, the music industry. He's an American guy who has met and married and settled down with an Aussie girl up in Brisbane. So we actually met each other. We were both speaking at a conference recently, and I was impressed with his story and fascinated with what he had to say about content and about the entertainment industry, because I think so much of what we do as content marketing needs to be entertaining in order to get the message across. So anyway, he's had a foot in entertainment, he's had a foot in the internet world, and so he's got some very insightful comments to make about content marketing, and also a few things towards the very end of the interview on his take on Facebook and also Myspace. So anyway, let's get on with the show. It's Adam Franklin here, and I'm joined by Chris Adams. How are you?
I'm well, Adam. Thank you.
It is a pleasure. Now, Chris, you've got a really interesting story as to how, I guess, you've got to where you are today through a number of different industries, actually. And I'm hoping you might be able to kick off by sharing your journey with us so far.
Yeah, I'm happy to. It's I often have to laugh at my own journey because, as my wife likes to say, with lots of love, is that I've kind of tripped and fallen my whole life into the right places, which I take as a compliment because, I certainly started off my journey wanting to be a writer and did all of that. Did my undergraduate degrees in English Lit and went to graduate school and studied writing and film and embarked on a career as a writer, which ironically, writing got me into the internet. And there was a TV show back in the late 90s called The Net, which was based on that Sandra Bullock movie. And long story short, I got a gig writing on the TV show, and I was a, long-haired surfer writer living in Venice Beach and didn't have an email address. And I'm writing a television show about the internet. So I called up a buddy of mine from childhood who was one of the founders and creators of Lycos, the big search engine back in the 90s. And I said, hey, I got this TV show. And he said, that's great. What's it about? And I said, it's about the internet. And he said, that's great. And I said, well, what's the internet? So he went and described to me, using Lycos as an example, what the internet basically was. And I thought I was being very clever. And I wrote Lycos into the plot of the show. And, the good guys are using Lycos to find the bad guys and all that stuff. And, had highest rating of the season. And, I thought, this Hollywood thing is easy. Only in all of their wisdom in the beginnings of the first .com boom, Columbia TriStar canceled the show. And I got a call from the head of Lycos saying, hey, we really liked that product placement that you did for Lycos with the show. And I went, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Product placement. Absolutely. That's what I was thinking about all along. So within very quick order, I ended up working in business development for Lycos, and then soon thereafter in the same capacity as a consultant for Amazon. Essentially, when Amazon was music, movies, and books, they needed somebody to go after music and movies. So I had this aspirations my whole life to kind of knock on the doors of movie studios and television networks and be a wanted writer. And it turns out the only way I could get into these places is because I was representing an e-commerce giant and a portal giant. And so I ended up doing a lot of their early deals, was responsible for getting Saving Private Ryan, Gladiator, Ants 2, and American Beauty the year that it won the Academy Award 30 days ahead of Walmart. First ever DVD deal where a brick and mortar retailer played second fiddle to a e-commerce site. And so met a whole bunch of people, and there's a common theme here about meeting people. I met some very, very wonderful people who, in the next phase of my career, when eBay's first president and co-founder, Jeff Skoll, he had exited and started a foundation called the Skoll Foundation, and he wanted to then make movies that made a difference. Things that, like Schindler's List and, Philadelphia and Erin Brockovich, these movies that have a social conscience, but they're big star-driven movies. And he said, well, why aren't we making more of those? And it turned out the only reason was that the studios were hesitant to write a check. They were happy to celebrate when, Erin Brockovich becomes famous and it's a social conscious movie, But, if you look at the early posters of Erin Brockovich, it was Julia Roberts' big hair and a push-up bra, and they were touting it as kind of a family fun movie. So I helped Jeff Skoll build and run Participant Media, and we did films like An Inconvenient Truth and Syriana and North Country and Good Night and Good Luck and Kite Runner. And then again, from meeting people, a lot of the guys that I grew up with in the Lycos, Yahoo, eBay, Amazon days had migrated over to this little social network in 2006 that was just kind of coming of age called Facebook. And they all needed a way in which, they were looking for somebody who could help them put video on Facebook. And they didn't know anybody in that space except me, so I got a call. Facebook had like 150 employees and had, I don't know, kind of low double-digit numbers and was just starting. And I kind of like, well, okay. So spent a couple of years there, got video on the site as a result of creating a user-generated content hybrid reality TV show where we would ask Facebook users questions and they would respond in first-person videos. And this is back when pre-iPhone, clunky little webcams, the laptop didn't have the cameras in them. And we ended up creating a, linear television show with 8 episodes that we distributed day and date on Facebook and on Comcast and on the Independent Film Channel. And it ended up launching the share button, which is interesting. So I saw the company go from, very small users at a college site to 300-400 million users and the powerhouse it is today. And along the way, I had married an Aussie and moved to Australia in 2009. And here we are, 6 years later, and I'm helping accelerate and advise and sit on boards of companies here that are trying to grow global businesses.
Fascinating. So you've been Hollywood, internet, music industries. It's a really interesting mix of experiences, I guess. And I guess I'd like to move across to how a lot of this experience and what you've learned applies to things like marketing on the web. Because a lot of us are trying to create content, trying to market our businesses, and we're trying to garner attention. And it's often very difficult to get traction, particularly on places like Facebook and on blogs, because there's just so much stuff going on the internet. It's very hard to get the type of attention that we crave. But I suspect there's a lot that you've learnt from particularly the Hollywood days and the TV show writing days that you might be able to share with us that can potentially make our content more interesting and more entertaining. Have you got any tips you can share with us there, Chris?
I certainly can. And, you've hit it right on the head. I mean, ironically, as the web and social and mobile have become so prolific and so pervasive, and when you have behemoths like Facebook and Twitter and others, there are tons of tips that are very tactical and very technical, how to write a great tweet. And, there's all kinds of stats about how video is, X times more engaging than any other kinds of content and all that stuff. But what I've found is very simple is that oftentimes we forget the basics, and the basics are storytelling. Right. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter whether you're pitching investors or you're creating content that is, selling or advertising or marketing your brand, your service, your product. You have to tell a great story. And if you think about the great company, right, whether they are consumer retail brands or Hollywood studios or tech companies or whatever, their brand has become a verb, right, because they've told the story so well. Like take, for example, Nike, right? The Nike swoosh and the words "just do it" are a story, because when you hear those words, it's that voice in your head, It's that coach, it's that parent, it's that teammate, right? There's that moment when you are playing athletics, or it could apply to, math teachers or whatever, where you just do it, right? And it's this rallying cry. Okay. And it's a brand slogan. Make no mistake. It was, thought up by clever marketers. But, why when Nike and Asics and Saucony and Adidas, and it's all the same, right? They're all the same shoe, right? But when you put on a pair of Nike runners, you just feel faster, right? It's become pervasive because you've become the hero of your own story, which is about, conquering something and doing something and achieving something. Like to switch gears, Facebook, when I joined Facebook, I was 40 and Zuckerberg was, I think, 22. Right? And I sat down with him and I said, tell me the story of what Facebook is, not the background, not how you created it. I said, what is it? Right? And he said, well, we've developed a social utility that allows you to easily and efficiently connect with people you already know. Right? And I said, Mark, that's a phone. You're describing a telephone. Right. So you're saying that Facebook, and this is back in the original days, when it was all about real world connectivity, right? And it's obviously, blossomed from there. But I said, Mark, if I know someone and I want to get a hold of them, I'll call them. Right. I said, so make it relevant to me. I'm 40. I just had a baby. Okay. I'm not your target demographic. Why should I use Facebook? And he said, okay, when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do online? And I said, open my email. He said, right. We wanted the Outlook for your life, right? Your business is on Outlook, your life's on Facebook. We want you to have Facebook always on, and anything that has to do with your life is on Facebook. So if you think about that as a story, right, it's Outlook for your life. And, here it is, 8 years later, that's what it's become. We never log out of Facebook. We check it constantly because it is the stories of our lives on one place. Outlook is all the stories of our business. Facebook is all the stories of our lives. So I think that storytelling, you've got to have a compelling story about your brand, your product, your service, your value proposition, whatever it is. And marketing is about making that story believable, trustworthy, and pervasive.
Wow. That's a very good description that Mark eventually gave you in that meeting.
He did. It was pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
And fascinating how it's actually unfolded to be exactly that. It's the first thing you look at when you wake up and it's your life.
I was amazed that, here it is, and Facebook has grown up, and Mark has grown up, and we've all grown up, and all that. And that statement that he made, and I don't know whether it was a part of his, talking points that he told anybody, or it was something that he made up in the room with me. It doesn't matter. That story is exactly what it's become, right? And I think that it takes that vision, right? I mean, Phil Knight at Nike, knew what he was doing when he created Just Do It. Right. And there's a lot of stories out there where brands, like eBay, for example, eBay, there were something like 164 live revenue generating auction sites on the web the day eBay launched. 1 year later, there was 2. And a year after that, there was 1. Right. And they didn't go out and market eBay. This is my opinion, right? Having spent a lot of time around eBay guys. My opinion is that they didn't go out and say, hey, we're another auction site and we're better. Right. They said, you can be an entrepreneur. Right, you can start your own business and you don't have to have even any supply. Like they didn't go out and say, hey, go troll through your garage and find your crap. It's a garage sale online, right? They said, be an entrepreneur, right? And so as a result, eBay has created more millionaires, not stockholders, business owners. It's created more millionaires than any company in the history of the world, right? Because they marketed empowerment. They marketed self-reliance, right? They said, you don't even need inventory. You can buy and sell on eBay without ever touching a product, right? And in the early days, it was about shipping and stuff like that, but it grew into almost a franchise model, right? Where you just sign up and then you put some stuff on and you can sell it, right? And to the degree that people are telling stories about these items, right, they win. So it's incredible how you can look at a lot of companies that are just like a lot of other companies, but why did they win? And generally for me, when I do a deep dive with my background, I go, well, those guys told a better story.
Yeah, Facebook and Amazon, eBay, that's so true. And I really like that point you made that they make you the hero of your own story. Like when you do put on your Nike, your running kit, you feel great. And you feel more inclined to go for a run. And it's about you, not the company itself. Now, how about in terms of, I guess, maybe even the structure of storytelling? Like that makes a whole lot of sense. what you've said about storytelling, but is there something that, like to take it to the next step, is there a structure or something we need to be thinking of as content marketers or business owners that can help us uncover these stories and tell them in a way that reflects, Hollywood movies or TV shows? Because there seems to be a set sort of flow or structure of those ones that makes us want to go back to the next episode or stick around till after the commercial break.
That's right. Well, look, the thing is, and this is something that I learned going through, high school and college and graduate school, learning about writing, like, training to be a fiction writer, right? Because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write books. And so what you learn is that there is this thing called the Aristotelian model of Western dramatic structure. Okay, so this is in Western thinking, and it's not against Eastern thinking or anything, but there is a model that was literally set out by Aristotle and the Greeks, thousands of years ago, on the hero's journey, right? And so it's really literally paint by numbers. I mean, if you look at a movie script, okay, and it's 120 pages long or 100 pages long, okay, literally on page 1, there's always the same thing. On page 10, there's your there's your inciting incident. On page 18, there's your first act break. Then there's a series of complications, and those complications are, hero against himself, hero against a villain, man against man against environment, man against society, man against, industry, right? And things get harder and harder and harder and harder, right? And along the way, you identify the hero. He or she is usually somebody who is naive. Then they have a pathway that they want to go down, but then something happens. Page 10 minutes in, there's an inciting incident. Something changes their lives. They meet a mentor. They then have to go in a completely different path in which they're ill-prepared for, but they're destined to do. Then they meet their nemesis, and then the nemesis throws all of these complications in the way until at the end, 90 minutes in or 100 minutes in, you have a battle to the death, the second act climax, and it's always existential. It's life or death. Whether it's literally or figuratively, it is existential. And then there's the resolution. Okay, think Star Wars, right? Luke is living on Tatooine, and Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru are moisture farmers. He just wants to go to the academy, right? Some droids show up, right? He has to clean the droids. He finds the message from Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. I wonder if that's old Ben Kenobi. Goes down into the gully, meets Ben Kenobi, learns that his father was a Jedi. Then his parents are killed by the Sand People, and then he has to flee he has to flee and go to Alderaan, and then he meets Han Solo. Meanwhile, we've met Darth Vader, who's chasing after Leia, who we've learned later is his sister. And then, he has to go through all of this stuff, and then he has to battle the Death Star. So every movie, every book, every great piece of fiction is exactly the same, right? I mean, there's only 11 stories in the world, right? One of them is boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back. Right. And so for marketers and for entrepreneurs and for company owners and stuff, I mean, if you just do a little brush up on how stories are written, because it's literally paint by numbers, right? And where great genius comes from is when the more you adhere to the formula, right, the more you can build great characters and great complications and great twists and great heroes and great villains, right? But if you watch any movie, okay, it's all the same, right? It's all the same. And what the trick is that structure. I mean, it's like laying the foundations and building the frame of a house, okay? Nobody really sees the frame and the foundations. They see the beautiful furnishings and the great aspect and the terrific windows and the beautiful sunny bedrooms. And every house is different because every house is personalized, but they're all built with the same stuff. You lay a slab of concrete, you put some wood, some timber, or some steel up, right? Put a roof on it, you make it watertight, and you put the plumbing in it, right? The magic comes in the decoration, right? But what you find is that marketers, storytellers, writers, directors, advertising people, PR people, they try to break the mold, right? They say, we're so smart that we're going to do something counterintuitive. We're going to shake things up, right? All that does is just annoy people, right? Because our brains are hardwired to follow heroes. Right? Millions of years ago, sitting around the campfire, how were all the myths created? Right? Well, these are stories, and it's always about a guy who goes into the woods and battles something. Right? We're just wired this way. And I think that if marketers brushed up a little bit on storytelling and realized that we are genetically and culturally prone to follow the same kind of curve, it's really like breathing. Marketers need to get people, you need to get them hyperventilating, but then you need to get them, taking a breath, and then you get them gasping with shock, and then you get them laughing, and then you get them crying. And, it's emotions. And how is emotions? Emotions are tied to breathing. Breathing's tied to rhythm. Rhythm is tied to stories. We expect certain things subconsciously, right? And so great marketers and great advertisers, in any medium, TV, digital, doesn't matter. They tell great stories because they understand that we all want the same thing. We want a happy ending, or we expect to be shocked at a certain time, but then you have to follow through, right? And so I think it's kind of like this little secret, because I've been walking around the internet in Hollywood and, in big Fortune 500 business and all this kind of stuff. And I've been going, this is just storytelling. And people go, what? And I said, oh, no, well, I was trained at KPMG, or I was trained at Droga5, or I was trained at this, and, we need to do this and this and this. Well, it all boils down to storytelling, right? You have to make people come on the journey. And the greatest stories involve you, right? I'm the hero, right? And so if you can have a product or a service or a value proposition that actually makes me believe that I'm better, right? And you can prove it, right? Nobody can prove that Nike is a better shoe empirically, okay? Why is Nike the biggest brand? Right? Nobody can prove empirically that Apple is a better phone manufacturer. But why will people who own iPhones never, ever, ever buy anything else? Because Steve Jobs and John Ivey set out to make the most beautiful devices the world had ever seen, right? Like, nobody gets rid of their iPhone because the Safari app is crap, right? It's always a price issue, and people will covet their Apple products, which are twice as expensive as Samsung's and more, because they're so beautiful and they make me feel better, right? Because I'm the hero. The iPhone was marketed as your world in your pocket. I mean, that's not exactly the words, but, it's about giving the power to you. By buying this device, you become self-sufficient. You can fulfill your dreams with this device. Look at what it does. It does all of these things, and it's all about you. Right. So if you can make the customer the hero of the story in a believable way, even if it's subconscious, then you win.
Make the customer the hero. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, Chris, how do you reckon, the foundation of storytelling has been around since the ancient Greeks and now is in Hollywood movies and everything in between? How do you feel that storytelling has evolved given, I guess, the introduction of the internet? And, typically movies are quite passive. You sit and watch and you're taken on the journey, absolutely. Yeah. But now, with the internet, we're actually active. How has that impacted storytelling?
Well, I think that the funny thing is that, social and mobile, we have we read all these statistics, and there's all this criticism about, our attention span is going down and, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. But I actually think that they have unlocked something that we as human beings have been doing, are doing, and will be doing forever, right? And that is participating. Right. So yes, movies, books, books take you into a world in your imagination, but it's still passive. Okay. Movies, television, the same way. So now on mediums like Facebook and Twitter and Vine and all the other ones, you actually have a way to interact. And the funny thing is that when we talk about that third and fourth screen, everybody's now sitting on the couch watching a movie with their iPad here and their laptop here and stuff. Look, we were doing that anyway. When we sat around the radio, when our grandparents sat around the radio, and heard, the stories of World War II, they were reading the paper and they were doing their homework and they were, knitting and they were, cooking and eating and all those types of things. So we multitask normally, but with these platforms, we have an opportunity to actually participate. Somebody can put a video of themselves doing something onto Facebook. Here's me on my vacation and I'm finally snowboarding, right? And that would be normally a passive medium. But now we have the opportunity to cheer for that person, to celebrate that person, to participate, to tell our own stories, to create connectivity, which we do anyway. And the great thing is the internet has given us that outlet. And ironically, you'd think that with this 2-way, 10-way, a million-way communications and so fast and it's so mobile that movies and television would die, when in fact we like genetically, neurologically, we like being passive. That's why the living room exists. And it's persisted through the advent of television, through the advent of the VCR and the DVD, through the advent of the internet. We still sit down and watch stories. We're not watching television. We're watching stories. Those stories could be 8 seconds or they could be 8 hours. Why are we binge watching so much? Right? The irony of the internet is now everybody's binge watching Game of Thrones because they're so hooked and they want it all now. They don't want to wait a week, right? So because it's a story, so technology has helped us to embrace and be involved with stories better, faster, and more often. It has broken the 24-minute and the 48-minute conventions of half-hour and hour TV and the 2-hour movies, and that you can tell a great story in 30 seconds or in 15 seconds on Instagram, right? But it's got to be a great story, right? And I think that for the first time, we have a medium that allows us to participate in a whole bunch of ways, but it doesn't mean that we don't want to just sit back and watch Iron Man, right? Again, it's how we're programmed. It's how we're neurologically wired. We love this stuff. So I think it's just made it more accessible and more fun.
I think that's some fantastic points, and interesting that from Aristotle's day to today that, it's still all about the storytelling, and some of the technologies change, and the fact that the internet has come about and made us able to be active and participate in the stories makes it even more compelling. Really, really appreciate your insights and input there, Chris. Are there ways that people can find out more about you?
Yeah, look, it's typical stuff. The best place to learn about my career is LinkedIn. I'm, as you would imagine, I'm a long time and very active Facebook user, but my relationship with Facebook has really evolved from being, early days into using it very heavily as a business tool. And now because, I'm an American living in Australia and I have a family here, and, my mom and my dad and my brothers all live in the States, Facebook is this way to share the stories of my son growing up. If it weren't for Facebook, my mother and father would not really know my son. Because, they live in America. And so what I try to do is tell the story of my son playing, Australian rules football, which is this really strange, wacky game to them. And it's a beautiful, incredible game that I'm getting to know. And I put pictures and I tell little stories. But LinkedIn's the best way. I really don't have a blog and a website and all those things. But, LinkedIn Business and Facebook is personal, but, LinkedIn's probably best.
LinkedIn, awesome. So Chris Adams. And did you have any inkling back in those early Facebook days that it would become the powerhouse social network that it is today?
Actually I did, but I don't think that I or anybody else could have imagined, the sheer value, right? Because I'm not a banker and I don't have that numbers and economics background and all that. $100 billion IPO, it sounds amazing and all of that. So I don't equate the value of Facebook with its stock price or its valuation. But did I think it would become ubiquitous and incredibly useful and global? Absolutely. And everybody else did too. Because, look, the way that Mark and the team and the guys and the gals there built it is it really was replication and scale. He started off at Harvard. And then he went to other colleges. And it wasn't about this linear progress of, we'll just go up and down the East Coast of the U.S. and then we'll go here. It was really like, well, where are all of their buddies that went to college? Where are they? Some of them went to Stanford and some of them went to Ohio State and some of them went to, Vassar and they just kind of did it that way. But once they got the core value proposition, that outlook for your life story down, they were able to replicate and scale from college campus to region to national to international. They were allowed or they were able to deal with problems like, the news feed and then the mini feed and then this came and then that came and all these things came and they made mistakes and then they corrected them and then they expanded and they contracted and now they're breaking up the whole platform and making it an apps because it's still just the same story. It's outlook for your life, right? So, I knew that it was going to be huge. I just didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, totally. And I guess just on this topic, what do you feel that companies like Myspace did wrong back in those early days, 2005, 2006, that I guess caused that shift from MySpace being the premier social network to them almost becoming obscure and then Facebook just dominating? Did they not tell their story as well?
I think it's true. From my opinion, and if we look at, the things that we're talking about, storytelling and marketing and brands and all of that, is that, MySpace certainly won in those early days in terms of creating a social network. But that social network was you sign on and you have 2 million friends, and I don't know any of them. And there's no differentiation between a person I actually know and a person I don't know, I don't think it knew what it wanted to be. Right? Because there was all kinds of music and there was all kinds of dating and there was all kinds of photos and there was all kinds of this and that. And I, for one, just really hated MySpace early. Right? Now, I think that what they should have done, in my opinion, is they should have focused on music and the entertainment industry. They should have said, you know what, we are a platform for, by, and about the entertainment industry. Right? We embrace musicians, we embrace artists, we embrace, that thing, because what they've done, this is the irony is that MySpace has the largest catalog of licensed music on the planet. Like, way more. You can take Spotify and RDO and iTunes combined, and they don't have the music catalog that MySpace does.
Wow.
Because early on, they went out and one of their stories was, we're all about musicians, right? So everybody put their music up. Terms of service, stuck it up there, right? And they haven't really done anything with it. Now you can understand why Justin Timberlake bought it, right? But I think the problem is that they had too many competing stories all going at the same time, and Zuck just had one, right? He was going to do his view and his vision of connectivity better and bigger and faster than anybody else, and he wasn't going to deviate, whereas MySpace went all over the place. And then, look, it had an opportunity being brought into the Fox and the News Corp network, empire. In my opinion, what News Corp should have done is stuck MySpace right in the middle of their entire communications and publishing network. Call it even something like MyFox, right? It is your gateway into the News Corp and the Fox and the 20th Century Fox and all of its ancillary products. It should have just been their own private social network, because their empire is vast, right? And it's music and publishing and magazines and newspapers and movies and television and documentaries and all of this. And they couldn't compete. Like, by the time they sold, or years before they sold, they could not compete with Facebook. So why not pivot and just become a social network for an entertainment conglomerate? But they didn't do that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but they never had focus. So now, under Timberlake, what you're seeing is MySpace getting back to its roots of music, celebrating the musician and the music lover, right? And quietly ticking along. And there's still, hundreds of millions of people on MySpace. But it took them 10 plus years to realize that their original value proposition about being a social network for music is actually what they should have done all along.
Fascinating. Chris, that has been a really entertaining chat. Thank you so much. And I look forward to keeping in touch and hearing more from you in due course. And I'm very pleased that an American has decided to live in Australia and marry an Australian. And
it's the greatest country on earth. It's the best. The big joy of the story of my life is that the best thing I've ever done is move here and raise a family here. And I say that to everybody. And I'm delighted to have spent the time with you. Thank you very, very much for the interest and the opportunity. And I look forward to hopefully doing it again sometime.
Sounds good, Chris. You take care.
All right. Thank you.
So that's a wrap for my chat with Chris Adams. Really interesting stories there, I thought, especially from the early Facebook days, and even that script or that plot line for Hollywood movies that he was calling paint by numbers. I guess when you think about it, all those movie lines do have the same story plot, but I guess the characters and the specifics are different, but the structure of the movie is the same. And I think that's a really interesting point when it comes to copywriting and storytelling on videos and presentations and webinars and everything else, to take a leaf out of proven story formulas and then simply apply characters and messages to that same storyline. So Chris Adams, good to see an American settling down in Australia. So this show was brought to you by a book called Web Marketing That Works, and the gift for you, our listener, is the bonus 33 free marketing templates. To get your hands on those templates, head over to bluewiremedia.com.au/book. Our intent is to deliver actionable advice. Your feedback and questions are always welcome. You can let me know your feedback via email. I'm adam.franklin@bluewiremedia.com.au or tweet me at Franklin_Adam. If you enjoyed the show, and I hope you did, I'd love it if you could leave us a quick review on iTunes. It really does increase our visibility and help us get more and more good quality guests. So that's episode 99. I think Toby's going to see it in with episode 100. But thank you for listening to the show. If you're a long-time listener, thank you for your support. And I really am thrilled to make it to episode 100, which will be the very next show. Thanks, team. See you later.